Imagine cheating on a test. Now imagine doing it 11 million times. Not 11 million slightly different tests. The same cheat, the same lie. Installed in 11 million vehicles across the world. A piece of software designed to do one thing: detect when the car was being tested for emissions, and then, only then, turn on the pollution controls. The rest of the time, those cars were pumping out up to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxides, the toxic gas that causes asthma, lung disease, and thousands of premature deaths per year. 11 million cars, 40 times the limit, for over 6 years, and nobody caught it. Until 5 researchers at a tiny university in West Virginia decided to check. This is the story of Dieselgate, how the world's largest automaker lied to every customer, every government, and every regulator on earth, and then paid $30 billion for it. I'm the business historian. Let's get into it. To understand Dieselgate, you need to understand why Volkswagen was obsessed with diesel. In Europe, diesel had been king for decades. Diesel engines are more fuel efficient than gasoline, they last longer, and in the early 2000s, European governments gave diesel cars tax breaks because they produce less CO2 per mile than gasoline. But America was different. Americans didn't trust diesel. They associated it with dirty trucks and black smoke. VW saw this as an opportunity. If they could crack the American market with clean diesel, they'd have a competitive advantage nobody else had. Volkswagen's strategy was simple: build diesel cars that were fuel efficient and clean enough to pass America's strict emissions standards. The brand campaign was called Clean Diesel. They ran Super Bowl ads. They positioned themselves as the environmentally responsible choice. The problem? Making a diesel engine that's both efficient and clean is really hard. The technology existed. Catalytic reduction systems using a chemical called urea could clean up the exhaust, but it was expensive, required a separate fluid tank, and took up space. Volkswagen's engineers faced a choice: invest in the expensive technology or find a cheaper way. They chose the cheaper way. They wrote a piece of software. The software, known as a defeat device, could detect when the car was on a test dynamometer. It recognized the testing pattern: wheels spinning, steering wheel stationary, specific speed and duration. When it detected a test, it activated the full emissions controls. The car would pass with flying colors. The moment the car was on a real road, the software turned the emissions controls off. Performance went up, fuel efficiency went up, and emissions went up by a factor of 40. Volkswagen installed this software in 11 million diesel vehicles worldwide between 2009 and 2015, across multiple brands: Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, Seat, Skoda. 11 million times the same cheat. And they got away with it for 6 years. The International Council on Clean Transportation, a small non-profit, wanted to prove that clean diesel actually worked. They needed real-world emissions data, not just test results. So in 2013, they commissioned researchers at West Virginia University to test Volkswagen diesels on actual roads. 5 researchers. A portable emissions testing unit strapped to the back of a car, driving around California. The results made no sense. On the test dynamometer, the Volkswagen Jetta and Passat passed easily. On the road, the Jetta emitted 15 to 35 times the legal limit. The Passat emitted 5 to 20 times. The researchers assumed their equipment was broken. They recalibrated, retested, same results. The gap between test performance and real-world performance was too large to be an accident. They published their findings in May 2014. Nobody paid attention. It took another year of pressure from the EPA, from California's Air Resources Board, from repeated confrontations with VW's engineers, before Volkswagen finally admitted the truth. On September 3rd, 2015, Volkswagen confessed to the EPA. They had installed the defeat device software in approximately 11 million vehicles worldwide. The CEO, Martin Winterkorn, initially claimed he knew nothing. Days later, he resigned. "I am stunned that misconduct on such a scale was possible in the Volkswagen Group," he said. 11 million cars. And the CEO claimed he was stunned. The financial consequences were staggering. In the United States alone, Volkswagen agreed to pay more than $20 billion. This included buying back or fixing nearly 500,000 affected vehicles at an average cost of about $25,000 per car, plus civil penalties, plus environmental remediation funds. Globally, the total cost has exceeded $33 billion, making Dieselgate the most expensive corporate scandal in automotive history. But it wasn't just about money. In September 2015, researchers at MIT and Harvard estimated that the excess emissions from Volkswagen's defeat devices engineers would cause approximately 1,200 premature deaths in Europe alone due to increased nitrogen oxide exposure. 1,200 people who would die earlier because Volkswagen wanted to save money on emissions equipment. Criminal charges followed. In Germany, Martin Winterkorn was charged with fraud. In the US, Volkswagen engineer James Liang was sentenced to 40 months in prison. Oliver Schmidt, a Volkswagen executive, got 7 years. Several other engineers were charged but fled to Germany, which wouldn't extradite its citizens. Volkswagen itself pleaded guilty to 3 felony counts in the US: conspiracy to defraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. A corporation pleading guilty to felonies. That almost never happens. So what can we learn from Volkswagen's $30 billion lie? Lesson 1. When the engineering problem is too hard, the wrong companies cheat instead of pivoting. Volkswagen's engineers couldn't build a diesel engine that was both clean and affordable. Instead of abandoning the strategy, they faked it. The pressure to hit targets created a culture where fraud became the path of least resistance. Lesson 2. 11 million is not a rogue employee. Volkswagen tried to blame a few engineers in a small department, but a defeat device installed across 11 million vehicles, across 5 brands, across 6 years, on multiple continents, is not a rogue operation. It's a corporate strategy. Somebody at the top either knew or made sure they didn't have to know. Lesson 3. The institutions that should catch fraud are almost always outgunned. 5 researchers at a university in West Virginia caught what the EPA, European regulators, and Volkswagen's own auditors missed for 6 years. The entire regulatory apparatus of the world's largest economies was beaten by 5 people with a portable emissions device and a rental car. And here's the kicker. After paying $33 billion in fines, the largest corporate penalty in automotive history, after pleading guilty to felonies in the United States, after causing an estimated 1,200 premature deaths, what happened to Volkswagen? They became the world's largest automaker by sales. Again, they pivoted to electric vehicles. They GDK launched a campaign promising they'd learned their lesson. They're now one of the biggest EV manufacturers in the world. $33 billion in fines, thousands of premature deaths, criminal convictions for executives, and the company is doing better than ever. The man who approved the cheating, 7 years in prison. The company that profited from 11 million acts of fraud, record sales. The crime paid, just not for the people who breathed the air. If you enjoyed this deep dive into corporate disasters, hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more stories of companies that fooled the world until they didn't. I'm the business historian. Thanks for watching.